Welcome to the Champions Training for a Dementia Friends session. This training is intended for people who want to facilitate a Dementia Friends session. Dementia Friends is an informational session where community members learn about dementia and determine the small things they can do to make a difference for people living with dementia. Today's program was adapted from Dementia Friends, an initiative of the Alzheimer's Society in the UK. You can learn more by visiting the website on this slide. To become a Dementia Friends champion, you must view this recorded training or participate in an in-person training. You must also review the Champion's Guide and the Dementia Friends session workbook. After participating in the training, a Dementia Friends champion is ready to conduct a Dementia Friends session. Dementia Friends is a one-time, one-hour session. Dementia Friends has been successfully implemented in several ACT on Alzheimer's communities. Upon completing the Dementia Friends Champions training, you should be familiar with the Dementia Friends program, understand the definitions of a champion and dementia friend, and be familiar with the content, activities, and materials used to facilitate a Dementia Friends session. What is the definition of a Dementia Friends champion? It's someone who participates in a champion's training via recorded webinar or in person, facilitates a one-hour Dementia Friends session using the Champion's Guide, Dementia Friends session workbook, and supporting materials, and helps community members understand dementia and the small things they can do to make a difference for people living with dementia. What is the definition of a dementia friend? It's someone who participates in a one-hour Dementia Friends session offered by a champion or pair of champions. They learn a little bit about what it's like to live with dementia and then turn that understanding into action. Anyone of any age can be a dementia friend. You will use the Champion's Guide to facilitate the Dementia Friends session. Please have the guide available as you participate in this training. The guide provides you with the content needed to facilitate the session. It offers you tips in preparing for the session, a list of materials, supplies, and equipment needed, and an overview of the learning model, which includes presentations by the champion, group discussion, and individual or group learning activities. It also offers recommendations on the size of a Dementia Friends session, group composition, and room setup. The Dementia Friends session is organized into 5 main sections. As a champion, you will offer an introduction that includes a welcome, activity, and presentation using content found in the Champion's Guide. The next session is an opportunity for participants to understand dementia. This includes a presentation and activity. Next, you will cover the impacts of living with dementia, which includes a presentation and activity. The next part of the session focuses on communication changes and tips for communicating with a person with dementia. The Dementia Friends session concludes with an activity and discussion of community resources. Marcia Berry from the Alzheimer's Association, Minnesota, North Dakota chapter will now walk you through the content you will use to facilitate a Dementia Friends session.
Hello, I'm Marcia Berry, Education Manager for the Alzheimer's Association, Minnesota, North Dakota. To begin your Dementia Friends training, you'll notice that there's a welcome and an activity. You'll notice throughout the Dementia Friends that there are several different activities. This is a way that you can get everyone involved because not everybody is going to be an academic learner. So this first activity helps people to begin the process of thinking about dementia. So I'll just ask you as we get started. Think about a word that comes to your mind when you hear the word dementia. My guess is that this word might not be totally positive for everybody. And that's going to be true of the folks in your Dementia Friends session. So after people have had a moment or two to think about this, have people share that word. And then you can point out that many of these words may be negative. We know that there's a stigma and a lack of understanding about dementia. And the Dementia Friends training is about helping to increase people's understanding and to reduce the stigma. Let's start out with some facts and figures. We know that there are now about 88,000 people in Minnesota over age 65 who live with Alzheimer's disease, and that number is growing. We project by the year 2025, and that's not so long off, that there will be a huge increase in the number of people with Alzheimer's disease. That number will be probably greater than 125,000 people. We also know that the younger onset type of Alzheimer's disease, people who experience symptoms before age 65, is growing, and we're seeing more and more of those individuals. I want to point out the next bullet point, which is about older African Americans and people from the Hispanic community. We know that those individuals are at a much greater risk than older white individuals to have Alzheimer's disease or other types of dementia. It's related to the increased risk of diabetes and heart disease, and we know that those are risk factors for Alzheimer's disease. We know that many people who have Alzheimer's disease want to and do live in the community. And we know that baby boomers have told us they want to stay living in their homes, in their communities. But a lot of people who live in the community live alone, and they are at greater risk for safety issues, for not managing other medical conditions, for falls, for leaving home and getting lost. Last night, I was talking to a woman who was describing her friend who now has a diagnosis of Alzheimer's. And this group of friends are worried about this woman because she's still cooking and she's still driving. So she's living alone in the community, and fortunately she has this group around her who are trying to watch out for her. We also know that about 250,000 people in Minnesota are family care partners for people with Alzheimer's disease. Family members put in a lot of time and a lot of effort and spend some personal money caring for people with the disease. It takes a toll on their work, it takes a toll on their personal life, their emotional life, and it can take a financial toll on people. So what are these dementia friends, and how are dementia friends going to help with these issues that we've just talked about? We know that many people who live in the community just need a helping hand, and they can be quite successful living in the community and going about their daily lives. So a dementia friend learns a little bit about dementia, learns how to communicate, how to support someone who's living with dementia, and then turns that into an action. And we're developing this growing network of people who are creating these dementia-friendly communities. And again, anybody of any age can be a dementia friend. Know that this has been very successful with many youth groups. This is a visual that shows you what a dementia-friendly community looks like. All parts of the community are included. All parts of the community are supporting individuals with dementia. That community is safe, it's respectful, it helps to raise awareness about Alzheimer's disease, which reduces stigma. It has lots of supportive options. We want to improve the quality of life for people with Alzheimer's disease. We want to engage people from many, many different diverse communities. And we want to help and create this community life that welcomes and supports everyone. So what do you need to know about dementia? This slide is a visual diagram of dementia. Dementia is a broad, a general term that describes many, many causes, many reasons why someone is losing thinking or cognitive skills. So dementia, again, is that broad term. There are many causes. Alzheimer's disease is the most common cause. So you can see from this visual that it's clearly the biggest cause of dementia. Probably about 50 to 80% of people with a dementia diagnosis have Alzheimer's disease. And there are other causes of dementia also. We've listed vascular dementia, Lewy body dementia, and frontotemporal dementia, which are some of the more common, but there are many other causes. You'll notice on the next two slides, which describe normal aging, the words occasional and sometimes. The idea that somebody is able to retrace their steps and find things that they've lost. You'll notice some physical changes that happen as we age that aren't related to dementia. So we know that sometimes as people age, they do forget names or movie titles or names of books. Let me describe a situation that happened to me a couple of weeks ago. I was talking to a friend, and we were talking about Netflix. And she was trying to describe an actor to me, and I really didn't know who she was talking about. And she couldn't come up with this person's name. She tried describing the person and some movies, and I was lost. So we went on and talked about something else. She called me about an hour later, and she said, Sandra Bullock. How could I forget Sandra Bullock? It was just one of those things that she lost and was able to retrieve a little bit later. You'll notice that sometimes older adults will talk about having difficulty finding the right word or the title of that actor or the movie or the book that they're thinking about. But notice that word sometimes. That's the important thing. Many of us, as we age, we have trouble finding things that we've set down. What did I do with my car keys? Where is my coffee mug? But we do that retrace. Okay, I was over here. Did I leave my keys in my coat pocket? Are they still in my bag? Are they on my kitchen counter? So normal aging, people are able to retrace their steps. We also know that sometimes we become a little more irritable when routine just gets disrupted and things just go out of whack. So perhaps you're driving someplace and you're on a time schedule, and all of a sudden you hear the dreaded thump, 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 and you know you have a flat tire. You get out of your car, you look, it's a flat tire, you kick the tire, you say some choice words, you grab your cell phone and you do something about it. You're still able to problem solve and handle that, even though it's really frustrating. Let's look at dementia, and let's look at the 10 warning signs of dementia. And here we're talking about changes that are much more significant. We're looking at memory loss that really disrupts somebody's daily life. So for my friend to have forgotten Sandra Bullock's name, doesn't really matter. But someone might forget things that are really important. They might forget a doctor's appointment. They might forget other kinds of appointments they have. They might still be working, and they might have trouble remembering passwords, remembering the sequence of events to complete a job task. Those do interrupt daily life, and those are warning signs that something's going on. Somebody may have trouble with completing tasks that they've been able to do for a long, long time. Several years ago, a friend was telling me how much trouble she had that year making Christmas cookies. She's a mother and a grandmother, something she's done for years and years and years. And she described being so worried about making cookies that year that she got all of her ingredients out, she got out all of her measuring utensils, read through everything, had everything all lined up and was ready to go, mixed everything up on the first batch of cookies, and couldn't stir it. She called her husband to come into the kitchen, and it was a hard lump, and he couldn't stir it. So he started to go through the ingredients and the recipe with her, and he said, well, here's a measuring cup that's really clean. What was that for? And she realized it was the liquid for the cookies. So something she'd been able to do for years, she just got confused about and had trouble doing. Many people describe having lots of difficulty with visual images or where their body is in space. How that often shows up is people having a lot of fender benders. They take the mirror off the side of the car pulling out of the garage. Many of us have done that, but we're not talking about just doing it once. We're talking about repeated fender benders, bumping into light poles, going up and over curbs, all of that happens repeatedly. We also know that many people have difficulty with words in speaking and sometimes words in writing. My mom was trying to describe snow melting, and she was having trouble talking about it. She was very happy it was happening, but she was having trouble talking about it. And what she would talk about was grass poking. which happens when the snow melts, the grass begins to poke up, but that's not what most of us would describe. We would really describe the snow melting. Another warning sign is misplacing things, but not being able to do that retracing. And where we hear about that in the community is with couples who are living maybe pretty isolated in the community. And he looks at her and he says, "My coffee cup. You moved my coffee cup. Where did you take it?" So the only thing he can do now that he can't retrace his steps is blame her for moving things. "My newspaper. You always move my newspaper. You always take my things." So you might hear that as this blame game on the primary care partner. You also might notice changes in somebody's mood or personality. They might become more irritable. They're just not as easygoing as they once were. And one of the other signs that we hear about when we talk to families here at the Alzheimer's Association is people really pulling away from activities or events that have really given them joy over the years. So somebody who doesn't go to the bridge game anymore. I have a little headache. I don't really want to go, or I think I'm getting a cold. I'm going to skip it this week. Because they're not sure they can really successfully play bridge, and so they just pull away from that. Or people who just don't participate in things as they used to do. So all of those are the warning signs of dementia. There are some key messages that we want you to take into the Dementia Friends training. Dementia is not a normal part of aging. It is different from normal aging. It is caused by diseases of the brain. The individual is not trying to make their family and friends crazy. They're not trying to be obnoxious. They have a disease of the brain. And dementia is about more than just memory. And you're going to see this in just a few minutes as we talk about communication issues. But it is possible to have a good quality of life with dementia. Nobody in our early stage advisory group has said to us, "I'm so excited I have a diagnosis of dementia." But what they will tell us is they now have an opportunity to find some meaning in their life, and people are finding meaning. They're doing things that they weren't able to do before this diagnosis, and they are finding some good meaning. We also know that there's just more to a person than just the dementia. That person is still a mom, a grandma. He's still the guy who likes to do woodworking. There's still the person who likes to sing, the person who likes to cook. So there is more to a person than just the diagnosis of dementia. Now we're going to have Dementia Friends do an activity. And this one is called Broken Sentences. This really reinforces the information that we talked about previously about normal aging and about dementia. What you're going to do is you're going to divide your group into pairs. If you have a large group, you might have to do groups of 3s. In their Dementia Friends session workbook, they're going to look at the Broken Sentences worksheet. We want to just reinforce and help people to understand dementia, and they're going to be matching the sentence from column 1 to column 2 to draw a line between those, and they'll have 8 sentences that make sense when they're done. After a few minutes, pull the group back together, have volunteers read the sentences and the match from column 1 to column 2, and then as the sentences are shared, you can reinforce more information that you find in your Champions Guide. The next activity is called the bookcase analogy. I would really strongly urge you to read this out loud. Don't assume that everyone who is in the group is a good, fluid reader or that they are able to read at all. So read this out loud. They can find this bookcase analogy in their Dementia Friends session, and they can follow along if they would like to. The next part is this diagram of the brain. Now, this is a drawing. These are not real brains. On the left side is what a healthy brain looks like, lots of tissue, pretty compact. There's lots there. And on the right is a drawing of a brain with Alzheimer's disease. The brain is degenerated, it's smaller, there are more spaces in the brain, just not as much brain tissue. This just gives people an idea that Alzheimer's disease is a disease of the brain, and it really is about the brain degenerating. The next activity is called everyday tasks. This one is often a real eye-opener for people and really helps dementia friends understand the impact of dementia on an individual. This activity is really in the next 3 slides. The group again will be working in pairs, or you might need to do groups of 3, and they're going to write a step-by-step list to complete a pretty familiar task. I urge you to assign one of the tasks to the group, and you make the decision beforehand, so the group isn't spending a lot of time trying to decide which task they want to do. And the tasks are brushing teeth, making a sandwich, or buying eggs. Pretty simple tasks that most folks are familiar with. Give folks the direction that they need to make sure that somebody who's reading this list could really follow these directions and complete this task. There's an everyday task page in their Dementia Friends session workbook so they can write down their list. Give them about 5 minutes to complete their list, and then ask them to share how many steps they use to complete this task. So let's just use toothbrushing as our example. So figure out in the room who had the first step and who had the last step. Ask the group that had the fewest steps or some other volunteers to read their list. You might notice that there are steps that really combine a lot of actions. There might be things that aren't on the list. And encourage the group to think about where extra steps could be. Then ask the group that has the longest list to look at their list and see if they need to add things. So often what happens is people start toothbrushing with grab your toothbrush, and it's like, well, you have to walk into the bathroom and then figure out where your toothbrush is and get the toothbrush and get the toothpaste, but you have to probably open a medicine cabinet to get the toothpaste. And it should be a very, very detailed list. So help the group understand that having a really complete list is pretty complex. And there are lots and lots of steps to all these kinds of everyday activities. There are discussions in your Champions Guide that you can use to keep a discussion going. And then you want to summarize this by sort of paraphrasing the idea that most of us take these simple daily tasks for granted. But when you really break them down, there are lots and lots of steps in everyday tasks. For somebody with dementia, they may have trouble making the decision. They may have trouble getting the activity started. They may have trouble sort of figuring out where they are in the task, remembering what they've done or what they need to do next. They really have trouble breaking tasks down. But if we can help to identify the steps and where the individual is struggling, we can help them to be more independent. Let's talk about communication changes. I mentioned before that dementia is about more than just losing memory. One of the issues that happens for many people is changes in communication. Communication, we all do it all the time. It's how we exchange ideas. It's how we talk about our feelings and what we want. It is a basic need, and humans communicate a lot. To communicate with somebody with Alzheimer's disease, you need patience, and you need some good listening skills. So changes that happen to the brain really impact communication, and it's going to be unique and different for every person with Alzheimer's disease. Some people may use familiar words or phrases just repeatedly. Sometimes people invent new words. I was at an assisted living, and they described to me one of their residents that they asked her if she liked cookies, and she said yes, but she didn't like Pinters. And nobody could figure out what a Pinter was. They asked her adult children, and it took them a while to figure it out, and they finally realized it was peanuts. Their mom didn't like peanuts. Peanut, Pinter, Sounds a little bit alike, but that was certainly a new word. Often people lose their train of thought in reading and in speaking, and have difficulty coming back to where they were in a conversation or in something that they're reading. As the disease progresses, many individuals do no longer use English, but begin to speak and to understand the language that they first used. We hear about this a lot in Minnesota. We know it's true of many of the older adults that are in the community. People often have trouble organizing words. I remember hearing about one woman who, when she talked with her adult children on the phone, would always say, "Well, it's good hear froming you." It's a little awkward, but she was very consistent about that. Good hear froming you. It's not quite the way most of us would say it. It is important to keep communication going. We all like to communicate. Even if the person appears confused, it's important to keep communication going. So what are some of the tips? What do we know helps to communicate with somebody with dementia? One of the first things that you can do is always identify yourself. Don't make this a guessing game for the person with dementia. One of my friends does this with her father by always starting out and saying, "Hi, Dad, it's Sally. I'm your oldest, most beautiful, and most talented daughter." It starts them both laughing, it gets the communication off with some humor, and it tells him who she is. Always use that individual's preferred name. So you need to know if there's some odd family nickname that they use. You also need to know if people use their titles. There are some folks who've always been doctors, and they will be a doctor until the day they die, and so you should use that doctor title. There's some people who say, "Oh, I retired 15 years ago, just call me Bob." It's fine. The same is true for clergy, knowing if the clergy person wants to have their title. Again, there'll be some people who want that title always, and there'll be others who say, "Oh, please, just call me Sue." But you need to know that. It's important to just use short and simple phrases, but to also do that in a dignified way. And it's also important to be patient. We know that people with dementia process information more slowly. One of the professionals we've worked with here at the Alzheimer's Association says it takes about 20 seconds for somebody with dementia to process information. So let's time that. Are you ready? Go. Okay, that was 20 seconds. I'm sure a lot of you were just really getting anxious, like, when is she going to talk? Is there going to be anything else? Is something wrong with my computer? That was 20 seconds. That just gives you an idea of that processing time. It's okay to repeat information. It's okay to repeat questions. That person with dementia is probably going to repeat things quite frequently, so you'll be doing the same thing. Another technique that helps is to take questions and really make them into answers. So instead of asking somebody if they need to use the restroom, you might want to say, "Oh, here's the bathroom, let's go in." Not asking if they want lunch, but saying, "It's time for lunch now," and then offering them some choices of what they might want to have for lunch. A lot of times when we talk, we are kind of vague and we might be kind of confusing. I might say, "Oh, just put it over there," or "That's okay, just go out there." For people without dementia, we tend to know what we mean, but for somebody with dementia, this can be pretty confusing. So if you can be really direct, it's helpful. Put your sweater on the back of the chair. Put your coffee cup on the table. It tells the individual exactly what you need them to do. Oh, negatives. None of us like to be told no. People with dementia don't like to be told no, and they might be hearing that more often than they like. So if we can take these negatives and make them into positives, It really is helpful. So I might, instead of saying, don't go out the door, I might say, please stay here with me. So I've given them the same information, but I've made it positive. As the disease progresses, you'll begin to use more visual clues and cues, photographs, pictures. You might be miming something to help the individual understand what you're asking for. Quizzing isn't very helpful, asking people repeated questions. Who's in that picture? When did this happen? Who are those people? It doesn't work very well. Always, always treating the individual with dignity, with respect, and as an adult. And for you, having an easygoing manner, having a smile on your face, having an open body language helps to calm that individual down. That person is going to take their emotional feeling off of you. And if you're open and easy, it helps them. Being aware of your feelings is really important. So if you're grumpy, if you're crabby, if you're rushed, you need to get rid of that outside somewhere. And then as you approach the individual, a smile on your face, an open body language, an easygoing voice is much more helpful. Patience is absolutely necessary. And it's important to offer people reassurance and comfort. The world is changing around them pretty dramatically, and anything we can do to reassure them that they're okay is helpful. Criticizing and arguing just don't work, and most of the time, it really doesn't matter. Many of the things we get into arguments about aren't important. Who cares? Let it go. If the individual can't remember the name of somebody or the exact date it happened, let it go. It's not worth the argument. And it's also fine for you to offer a guess. Did you want that pen? Are you ready for lunch? So you might just want to offer a guess if you can't figure out what they're asking you. And all the time that you're doing any kind of communication, it's really your facial expression, it's your body language that are much more important than any words that you're saying. And now we're going to turn these understandings into action. So you're going to help this group of dementia friends think about what it is that they can do now that they have this information about dementia. They could keep in touch with people in the community. They could offer assistance to people. So if they saw somebody crossing the street and looking confused, they might want to help that person or figure out if that person knows where they are. They could smile and just say hello. They might want to volunteer for different kinds of programs. They might want to talk at work or with their faith community or with other friends and family about dementia and share with others how other people can become dementia friends. So these are some very specific actions that dementia friends might want to think about taking. Now you want to engage your dementia friends into writing down that action. We know that when people say it and write it down, they have much more buy-in to what it is they're going to be doing. So now they have their page. I am a dementia friend, and as a dementia friend, I will. This is that final I will activity. They're going to think about the action they want to take, and they're going to write it down, what it is they want to do. There are some resources to help you. If you want more information about dementia, if you want to share the resources in the community with dementia friends, the Alzheimer's Association helpline is on the slide, also the Alzheimer's Association website. For questions, people might want to call the senior linkage line, and the number and the website are on the slide. So you might want to share other information about local community resources, and make sure to include any culturally specific resources if those would make sense for your audience. So thank you for being a Dementia Champion and offering Dementia Friends sessions. Next, you're going to learn about some additional information and some supporting materials to help you as a Dementia Champion. Thank you.
The Champion's Guide also includes references to the information cited in the Dementia Friends session, additional web resources, and supporting materials to successfully implement the session. You'll find the supporting materials in the back of the Champion's Guide. There is a template of a sign-in sheet that you can use for participants at the session. You or your organization can keep this document. ACT does not collect this sheet. The I Will certificate is also found in the Dementia Friends workbook. Each of your participants will complete this form indicating what they will do now that they are a Dementia Friend. There is a Dementia Friends session checklist for you to review prior to offering a Dementia Friends session. It provides helpful tips on marketing and setting up your session. There is an optional Dementia Friends session evaluation form. This evaluation form is for your use only. ACT does not collect this form. There is a template registration form. There is a Dementia Friends session reporting form. This form is completed by the champion indicating where and when the session was offered and the number of individuals trained in the Dementia Friends session. The completed form is returned to ACT on Alzheimer's. You can send it in the mail, fax, or enter the data online. The guide also includes sample ads and marketing materials. This concludes the Champions training. Thank you for becoming a Dementia Friends champion. Please contact ACT on Alzheimer's with any questions.